Hey everyone, it's your host Courtney Turek with Bold Moves, Confident Choices. We're here to talk with leaders and entrepreneurs about making fearless decisions and taking charge of your own path. Let's get real, get bold, and take charge of your future. I am super excited today to share with you a very special guest. His name is Jim Fielding. He is a respected leader and C suite veteran in brand strategy, consumer products, experiences, and best of all, storytelling. He has worked at some of the world's largest media and retail companies, including Disney, DreamWorks, and 20th Century Fox. He is passionate and an advocate and philanthropist for the queer community, higher education, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. As author of All Pride, No Ego, he is committed to safe and authentic spaces for all individuals and communities. Jim spends his time as an executive coach, speaker, and now advocate, and gives back through his work with Braven Mentoring, the Indiana University Foundation Board, the Point Foundation, and various local community efforts in Atlanta. And without further ado, I am super excited to bring Jim Fielding to the stage. Jim,
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you. Jim, when we first connected, you just have so much experience, and I was just in awe listening to all your stories. So, I mean, whoa. But again,
That's a
thank
nice
you.
way of saying I'm old, but thank you. Like that's
I
that.
I did not say
I
that,
feel
Jim.
it. It's me. I feel it. But thank you. Yes, I have a lifetime of stories
Well, Jim, okay, we're going to jump right in because we have a lot to talk about.
for
So,
sure.
before I get to some big questions, just tell us a little bit more about you.
For sure. I mean, I'm a proud Midwesterner, a product of Toledo, Ohio. I grew up in a very, middle class family. My dad was a fireman. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. Very Midwestern values, very Midwestern, public school education. Went to Indiana University. I think that was probably one of my big pivots, like life changing to kind of leave the state and go 6 hours away from school. Studied overseas in Denmark my junior year. And then really career wise, I lived all over the Midwest for the first 6, 7 years of my career, and then 25 years in California. And the first half of my career was really pure retail, department store, the Gap. The second half of my career is consumer products and experiences within media and entertainment. So Disney, DreamWorks, Fox, to your point. Had an amazing, a successful career. Definitely proud of what I've done. Definitely lots of stories to share. But interestingly, I now live in Atlanta because I was at a pivot moment in my life and career when the pandemic hit. So I always say that the pandemic, I was already sabbaticalizing and thinking about what I wanted to do next. And like the pandemic basically just accelerated that. And so I initially moved back to the Midwest for about a year, year and a half, and then ultimately ended up in Atlanta. And I actually moved to Atlanta because I got into a relationship. It's the first time in my life I ever moved because of a relationship, and now been in Atlanta 4 years. So it's like me and my partner, fiance, to be married this September, and my two dogs. And I'm learning. It's the first time I've ever lived in the South. Like I've lived a lot of different places, but it's my first Southern experience. So yeah, I'm excited. This Atlanta works for my life for a lot, not only for that, but it also works for how I'm working now because of the great airport and access to it. It's good.
That's awesome. And you know what? I can attest. It's the first time for me living in the South,
Yes.
also from the Midwest. The big question, Jim, I have to ask, and everybody is wanting to
Mm,
know, what would you say was the big, bold
mm,
move or confident choice that took things to the next level for you personally
mhm.
or professionally?
Yeah, I mean, luckily for me, I think it's a combo platter for what we're talking
Mm.
about. I mean, it was really making the decision to write the book and actually getting a book published, which, as you know, is not easy. There's so many great books out there that have never been published. And it for sure, that has changed everything personally and professionally to the point of where I quote left corporate. I was working for after Fox and after the sabbatical, I was working for an incredible independent media company called Archer Gray. But I left that last summer, basically, end of August 2024, to focus full time on my coaching business, my speaking business, and writing more books. And so I always say that the book was kind of the catalyst or the enabler of everything else that gave
Mm.
me the confidence that I knew intuitively this is how I wanted to spend my time, but I needed the confidence to take that leap. I mean, you and I talked about Courtney when we first met. I mean, I'd had a paycheck from somebody else since I was 13 years old. I'm Midwestern, right?
Yeah,
Like
right.
my parents put me to work because they were like, your allowance is never going to feed your tastes. Like there was a disconnect between how I wanted to spend my money and how much they were willing to give me an allowance. And so, when I got that last paycheck, which I remember August 31st, 2024, that had been 46 years of paychecks and benefits. Think about that. Then I became an entrepreneur, right? A solopreneur, whatever this term is. But it all, to your question, goes back to the book for sure.
So, Jim, there's a few things there, and that's amazing that it really goes. That book was the foundation for you, like that big pivot moment.
Hmm.
So, you mentioned getting published, and I want to bring this to the surface because there's so many people nowadays we hear about writing books.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily mean they're published. Is that right? Can you help us out here?
Totally. Well, I mean, I think the publishing world has gone through so much, especially with the advent of social media and all of these platforms like Medium and Substack and things like that. And there's many options for an author who wants to publish a book. You can self-publish. There's many different sizes of publishing houses. I was lucky enough to get published in one of what they say the big five. So I'm with John Wiley and Sons. I liked being with John Wiley and Sons because they're known for leadership books. They're known for inspirational books. And as a first time author, I'm very coachable. I'm a coach, but I'm also very coachable. I needed the structure of a large publishing house to be like, okay, this is how you do it. And we're going to help you write, not help you write, but help you organize and help you design your cover and give you deadlines and give you a grammar editor and give you all of those things. And so I'm extremely grateful. And, my main editor who really helped me unlock the book because yes, I wrote a 15-page treatment and got picked up for the book. But then
Okay.
all of a sudden, yeah, so I wrote a treatment first,
So,
you
hold on,
know,
Jim. A
yeah,
treatment, can you explain what a treatment is for all of us?
totally. So a treatment is basically about a 15-page document. And what most traditional publishers want is a working title, like kind of a chapter outline, and then they want a writing sample, right? So I actually wrote like the first 10 pages of my book, almost verbatim. The first 10 pages of my book are made it to the end because they want to see your voice, they want to see your style, they want to see what makes you unique and differentiated. And then of course,
Mm.
they look in the marketplace and decide, is this a marketable book? I mean, at the end of the day, it's a
Business.
company, yeah, it's a business. So they need to know it's going to work. And the editor that I was with, which I know is going to get into one of your other questions, but the unlock for me was after that, like then you have this moment of panic as a first time author. Like you get the deal and you're like, oh my God, what did I just sign up for? And I'll be honest with you, Courtney. They're like, you need a 60,000 word book. I had no idea what that meant. So I Googled how many pages is a 60,000 page book, right? And it's like 230 pages. And I was like, ooh,
Well,
I don't think I have that, right? And she was so amazing because I was 56 at the time when I was writing the book. And she said, I'm going to make this so easy for you. I want 56-year-old Jim to write the book to 25-year-old Jim that you wished you had when you were 25. It became a very selfish, cathartic process for me because I was like, oh, and so the book, I know your listeners and viewers don't know, the book is organized around 10 life lessons. And they're literally 10 life lessons slash leadership lessons that I wish I knew when I was younger, that I knew, the benefit of wisdom, the benefit of now, it doesn't mean that we didn't play with the order. I always knew what the first one was going to be and the last one. I was very clear on this, what the first lesson was and the 10th lesson was. But the in between we played with. And that's what an editor helps you do.
so you get this book deal, Jim. Well, how much time did you get to write this book?
Oh, you're such a good interviewer. The original deal was 14 to 18 months. And because I had a full-time job, I was consulting, I had clients. And so I was literally, this was a nights and weekends, my quote side hustle. As I was turning in chapters, I remember when my editor, her name's Shannon Bargo, I can say it, called me and said, we want to move up your timeline. This is looking really good. And we want to get you out. I was originally going to be spring of 24. they're like, we want to get you out in fall of 23 because we want to get you out before the election cycle. Because obviously, the subtitle of the book is A Queer Executive's Journey to Living and Leading Authentically. We knew that it was going to
Mm-hmm.
be a political year.
Yeah.
She called me and said, you're about halfway. Can you basically deliver almost 8 months early? And I was like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, because again, you're a first timer, Courtney. You're like,
Yeah.
yeah, I can. And and then,
Sure.
sure, then like moments of panic because I was like, oh, I've got 22,000 words written and I need 60, right? And then, by the way, you write more than 60 for all of your viewers because stuff gets edited, right? And you make mistakes. And so I was like, okay, I did it to write like 65,000, 70. But I did it, and again, God bless this man I'm going to marry because we, in November of 22, yeah, I have to make sure I have the dates right. I was about at 40,000 words and I had to have it in by the end of December. And we had a previously planned trip, which we needed because it was, you guys remember, it was like the middle end of pandemic. Like we hadn't traveled. And we flew to Puerto Rico because it was a direct flight, beautiful resort. And for whatever reason, the writing bug hit me. And I literally said to him, have fun, go do whatever you want to do, take the car. And I think I wrote 18,000 words that week. And so by the time, even on the plane on the way home, it just hit me. And that for me was probably my biggest learning as an author, because at first you're getting to know me, Courtney, but I would be like, I'm going to write an hour a day between 7 and 8 a.m., right? That was a train wreck. And then I'd be like, oh my God, I haven't written in a week. And I become like, my inner saboteur would be like, you're not worthy. They should have never given you this book deal. It's horrible, right? And then I learned, and I talked to some other authors, that like you write when it strikes, when you feel it. And so for me, that meant I was in Puerto Rico on vacation. I was getting up at 6:30 in the morning and just going, making coffee and going to the computer. So I basically finished the book, the first draft, almost on the plane on the way home from Puerto Rico. So I delivered it actually about 3 weeks early because I thought, I don't want to deliver it during Christmas. That's weird. Even though 12/31 was my deadline, I backed it up. Again, we're teaching people who want to be an author. First draft, then there was a second draft deadline, a third draft deadline. Final for me had to be ready April 1st, 2023, to be out in fall of 2023.
Just listening to how this came about for you, I can only relate to posting on LinkedIn, for example.
Totally.
Like, Jim, I have tried so hard to pre-plan posts. And
Mhm.
anytime I do, it does not move me. I am a girl in the moment. I've got to feel it. And when the timing is right, I strike. Hey, I've got a question for you. Want to make thousands more in your next salary negotiation? If you knew there was a proven system to help you land more money, better benefits, and a total compensation package that reflects your worth, would you take it? The Salary Bump Accelerator is that system. It's packed with everything you need to get out of your head, prepare for your interview like a pro, and negotiate with confidence so you never leave money on the table again. And because you're a loyal listener to Bold Moves Confident Choices, you get 15% off with code BOLD15. That is all caps BOLD15. Go to thesalarybump.com to get started because your next paycheck should be your best one yet. Let's get you paid what you're worth.
Yeah.
So interesting you talk about, it's like you took yourself away from reality and you were in this magical place and it just took
Inspired.
over.
It was a water thing, I realized, because most of the book was written looking at Lake Michigan when I was living in the Midwest, and
Yeah.
then looking at the ocean in Puerto Rico. I'm an Aries. I'm a fire sign, so I think I need water to calm me, right? And
I'm fire too.
yeah, and so water.
Sagittarius.
I love. Oh, I love that. My sister's Sagittarius. I love that song. But water is a huge inspiration to me, and so I think waking up, sitting on the deck looking at the water with a cup of coffee was very reminiscent to looking at Lake Michigan, which was where the first part of the book was written. For some reason, it just worked. And God bless him for never. Of course, I ate dinner with him. I don't want your readers to think I'm horrible. I did take breaks, but I didn't. I was like, listen. And he knew when I'm in the mode, let me go.
Well, it says a lot about him as well and the respect he
Completely.
has for you.
Completely. And the fact that he's independent and can entertain himself, right? Like I always say, I love our relationship because we're interdependent, we're not codependent, right?
Yes.
So he just went off and did his thing and snorkeled and swam and sightseed. And sometimes he brought me home really nice lunches. I didn't know where he got it, but I was like, okay. And then I always made sure like the afternoon and evening, because I'm very much a morning person. And so I would definitely peter out. And then it would be playtime. So that's nice.
Well, okay, so through this journey and writing this book, all these deadlines, what was the real struggle? Like, where was the emotion? Like, oh, something, I got
I
something. Okay.
know. Well, again, this is so good. You could retitle this like How to Write a Book. One of the things my editor did is I had 15 early readers and I would subtitle them truth tellers. And so it was people in my life that I respected and I trusted to be confidential and to give me direct, honest feedback. And I would share chapters or pages, not necessarily with all 15 of them at the same time. It wasn't like this mass email, and my sister was by far the number one truth teller because I had to fly to Phoenix and have the conversation with her and my mother because my book is very personal. But guess what? It's not just my story, it's their story too. Right. And so
Yeah.
I had to make sure that they were comfortable with that. And my sister Jill, was unbelievable in telling me to go deeper. Like, you're skimming the surface. If you're going to do this, just go for it. And I was like, okay, are we ready? And she was like, yeah. And then I had a couple dear friends actually who had written books before. And one, it doesn't matter who it is, but one said to me, because at one point the book kind of at the beginning of the prologue said, this is not an autobiography. This is a leadership and life lesson book. She's kind of cried BS on that. And she said, Jim, this is completely your story. Like, why aren't you just owning it? Own it from the beginning that you're telling your story and your anecdotes, it hopefully to help other people learn. And once, so those early readers and truth tellers were huge influencers on me basically going more vulnerable, going more honest, telling the hard stuff. And I wanted to do that, Courtney, because people look, even when I was listening to you introduce me, and people are like, oh my God, this guy's had like this magical career, magical life. What they don't see is all of the insecurities, all of the failures, all of the mistakes, all of the self doubt that riddled that career path. And I felt
Right.
it was so important for younger people in particular to be like, it isn't all milk and honey, it's work. And I personally and professionally had to grow and had to take risks and had to make mistakes and had a coach and had a therapist. And I needed to share that because so many times, I think, particularly when you mentioned like LinkedIn and Instagram and Facebook, people are like, it's a little bit of that Facebook fake thing. And I'm like, no, I'm proud of what I've done. I love the people I've worked with. I'm at a great place. But let me tell you, there were some dark moments, and that's normal. Like, I had to normalize it.
Right.
But I needed permission, particularly from my sister, to go over some of the hardest parts.
Yeah. Wow. And, those are truth tellers. We all need truth tellers in our life.
100%, 100%. They're like your board of directors or your board of advisors, right? Like,
Yes.
for sure. And so a lot of them are my personal board of advisors, but they also happen to be good for early readership. And I made them, they had to volunteer. It wasn't like I drafted them, but it was a job, right? To be an early
Right.
reader, it was a job.
So, Jim, now we've talked about all ego and all pride, no ego is the book,
Hmm. Right.
correct?
Yes.
Before we get into the big last question, I want you to share, what do you think? And this might be very hard. You give 10 life lessons. What are
Hmm.
your favorite top three that can lure us?
Gosh. Oh, I love this question. It's lesson 1, 3, and 10. So lesson 1 is control the controllable, but leave space for the possible. Lesson 10 is authentic kindness is more important than being right or being first. And lesson 3 is don't let anyone dim your light. And those three are my personal favorites. I would say, particularly lesson 3, when I'm out, speaking to groups or on the book tour, lesson 3 really hits home for people. It's also kind of known as the bullying chapter. And there's a couple other ones. I mean, I like all my lessons, but those are my three. I think the one that makes people laugh, there's two that make people laugh. One, lesson 9 is selfish is not a bad word. There's a life lesson that's called how do you define enough, and how do you define enough makes people laugh. There's a lot of it's And the way the lessons go, there's kind of the dark one and then the happy one. The dark one and then
Way to take us on a roller coaster ride,
yes,
right?
exactly. But those three, 1, 3, and 10, I think.
Well, those first 3, I will tell you, really got me and actually made me a little emotional because
Mm,
it's something that really resonates with me.
yeah, for sure.
So thank you for that.
They're very personal and very, to your point, very universal. I mean, I tried, even though the subtitle is A Queer Executive's Journey, I tried to make sure that the life lessons were applicable to everybody. I always say the life lessons say, don't say control the controllable, but leave space for the possible and be a gay man, right? Like that's not the life lesson.
Yeah.
I wanted universal, my truths, but I wanted them to be universal truths too.
So this book is for everyone.
For
A-
sure.
And with your stories to help it to become relatable to us all and to do that reflection
Totally.
upon ourselves, which we all need to do.
Totally. It's all about self awareness, self actualization in a lot of cases. I mean, some of my favorite moments on the tour are, people who come up and say to me, oh my gosh, we lived a parallel life. How did I not know about you? Or someone who looks completely different than I do who says, I really learned from your book. And that was really my goal of if everybody could take away 1 or 2 things from the book, like it's not a manifesto. It's not a
Yeah.
do this and your life is going to be perfect. By no means. In fact, I say that about 10 times in the book. Please do not think this is the to do list. But if you can take away 1 or 2 things, you felt like reading the book or listening to the book added some value to your life. That's all I can hope
That's a win. Yeah.
for sure.
Okay, Jim, I'm going to jump in because I can't
Yeah,
believe, again, time is just flying
I
because
know.
we're
That's how
having
it is
so
when
much
we
fun.
talk. Exactly.
So, Jim, you alluded to this earlier in the conversation. It sounds like you definitely know the answer to this. And what would you tell Jim Fielding, your 18-year-old self
Mm.
today?
Well, it's personal. I mean, I would tell 18-year-old Jim to embrace your authenticity and own your story at 18, which was I was gay and I was in denial and calling myself bisexual and thinking it was a phase. And, I had been socialized. It was a very different time, Courtney. Like I was going to school in the 70s and 80s. It was not an easy time to be queer. Then it was the AIDS crisis. There was just a lot. And at 18, I had so much angst and self loathing, quite honestly. And at 18, I wanted to change. I thought I was broken. I thought I was not going to have a happy life being the way I was. And so I was trying to figure out what do I need to do? And I literally was praying about it. I was talking to my confidants. There was very few people that knew my truth, but I had a few. And I wish I could have relieved. I wish I could go back and relieve 18-year-old Jim from that burden because I loved college. I think I would have loved it even more if I wasn't worried all the time. I think I would have chosen a different company to start with when I graduated at 22. I think there was a lot of decisions that were made based on me not liking myself, beyond that, not loving myself. And so I basically would say at 18, accept yourself unconditionally, own your story. You are a unique unicorn, and that's what you're supposed to be. And if you just embrace that, you're going to have a much easier path than the one you're on right now, for sure.
Jim, this is exactly why I have this podcast.
Yes.
That right there. If we can all just embrace that,
Mm,
if we're not there today, wherever age you might be, do it now. It's never too late.
totally. No, for sure. And seek the help. That's the other thing. I mean, yes, I had a few people I talked to. It was a very inward journey for me. It was a very, and I should have sought resources because there were resources. And I should have trusted my parents more, to be honest. It took me a lot. I didn't come out to my parents till I was 26. They could have handled it, and they did handle it, but they could have handled it at 18. We
Yeah.
could have had the conversation then, but I didn't trust them, honestly. I was afraid. It was fear. I mean, I think so much of our lives, especially when we're 18, is fear based and that inner saboteur negative talk that I didn't trust them. I didn't trust my sister. I didn't trust my parents. I didn't trust my friends. I have friends from when I'm 18 and now, getting ready to turn 60 that are my ride or die posse that I didn't tell them till I was 26 or 27. I should have told them at 18. It would have been okay. That's what you go back and tell your younger self. It's going to be
Right.
okay.
It's going to be okay. Another
And if
important
they're not right,
reminder.
and if they're not going to be your friends, if you own your truth and they're not going to accept you, then they're not supposed to be your friend. I also firmly believe, as you know, Courtney, everything happens for a reason. And I wasn't ready at 18. I wasn't.
Yeah.
It took me till I was 25, 26.
Well, Jim, your story has been remarkable.
Thank
And I will tell
you.
you, I cannot wait I'm going to listen to your book, All
Yes.
Pride, No Ego,
It's me
because,
talking. Yeah. So for
oh,
sure.
really?
Oh,
You've lured me in. So thank you.
yeah. I encourage anybody, like a lot of people that have listened to it say it's like I'm talking to you for 6 or 7 hours. Like it's like having a conversation. And I was skeptical about the audio version, but I think it's pretty popular.
So, Jim, with all of this today, is there anything you want to leave us with before we walk away today?
I think it's kind of the way I end all my talks is the mantra that has guided me really. I mean, it was in my high school graduation speech is may we leave our corner of the world a little better than we found it. And I would just leave that with everybody in that. Especially think now for those of us that live in the United States, it's not the easiest time. There's a lot of civil discourse, there's a lot of anger, there's a lot of fear and frustration. And I think now more than ever, we have to double our efforts to just be those random acts of kindness, to smile more, to try and take care of each other, because we'll get through whatever you're going through. We will. But I think I really come back to that a lot. It's your corner of the world and it's a little better. Like I'm not asking for grand sweeping changes. I try to think every day, did I make a positive impact?
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And so, Jim, where can people find you?
So easy. My website is hi jimfielding.com. That's a very easy place to find me. LinkedIn, I'm Jim Fielding. Like I'm Jim Fielding and I'm Hi Jim Fielding on Instagram. Those are the three easiest places to find me. The book is available everywhere. I mean, Amazon, Barnes and Noble, allstora.com, which is a great LGBTQ online bookstore. And Audible, I know it's on Audible. A lot of people ask me about Audible, Spotify. It's everywhere.
All right, Jim, I can't thank you enough for
No,
being here
thank you,
today.
Courtney. This is amazing. Amazing.
It really has been wonderful. I've learned a lot, I've soaked in a lot. And to
Good.
our audience, I hope you also took away a lot of gems and pearls today. But as I leave you always, please go be bold, be confident, and be you. Until next time, see you soon.